Hello and welcome to the Heroic Review. This is our weekly episode review, and this week we are looking at Season 4, Episode 20, Leap of Faith. This is the 85th episode overall, written by Josh Harper, and in this week's episode, Granny Smith and Apple Bloom win a swimming competition. Joining me is my panel of pony experts, Goombasa.
Hello, everybody.
PDK.
Annyeonghaseyo.
Reverb.
Hello there.
I'm your moderator, Deadlyreg. Hello there. And let's start with our general opinions. Goombasa, would you like to start?
I enjoyed the episode, to the surprise of absolutely no one. It was a very good Applejack episode, a little bit predictable, I think, but then again, you could lobby that sort of criticism at pretty much any of the key episodes, and it is important to note that this was indeed Applejack's key episode. I like the fact that the Flim Flam brothers were brought back as antagonists, and overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, predictable, but as Goombasa says, we kind of see the key episodes coming a mile away. I, too, enjoyed the Flim Flam brothers, although I'm confused why anyone would give them an inch. If you've experienced them once, why wouldn't you just run them straight out of town? But I enjoyed the episode. I didn't think it was great because I don't enjoy anything I can see coming a mile away, but it had some good moments.
I quite like this one as well, maybe not quite as much as Goombasa. There were a few things which sort of ground on me a little bit, and as you guys said, it was also quite predictable in some circumstances as well, but yeah, no, I quite liked this one.
I thought it was pretty solid. It was better than the previous key episode. It felt like an actual episode of the show. The writing was decent, the pacing was good, and we can discuss the message. First up, we're going to do our regular Derpy Watch. Did anyone spot her? No one?
That's a no.
Okay, well, thanks. Sweetly were here, he'd have spotted her with laser-like efficiency, but unfortunately we have the second tier group. So if anyone saw Derpy, if you could just make a comment under the video and we'll be sure to mention it next week. Alright, on to the free-for-all. So, Flim and Flam were back. Were we happy to see them?
Yes, they were actually the last villains I thought we would ever see again after their appearance in Season 2. But I was actually very, very happy that they were brought back, especially considering that it factors into this episode and its message so well. I really liked them in this episode. I have a soft spot for the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, but I do think that here they were even better than they were in that episode.
When Flim and Flam first showed up, I thought, oh no, these guys again. Because, I mean, while I quite liked the Super Squeezy 6000, shit, I suck at that really bad. Those two antagonists just really ground on me, and when I saw these guys show up this time, I thought, oh god, it's going to be exactly the same. But the way they jumped onto and seized every opportunity to sort of just keep growing and growing, I thought it was really quite funny, and I really quite enjoyed that from them in this episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed them. I mean, they were annoying, but that's kind of their point. And I didn't think when they first kind of popped up, I didn't think, oh, great, they're back, because I wondered where they were going to go with that. I wondered if it was going to be just a rehash of they're just these guys who will try anything. But I think it developed a little bit. I saw something in this episode that was different enough from the previous Cider episode that I think their characters were more devious. And I see them, yeah, they could be recurrent villains, but you've got to use them lightly. You can't just have them coming back every season, so I'm glad they haven't.
The part, I think, that really showed off just how much development they had had since their last appearance was when Applejack is confronting them, and they're really trying to sweet-talk her into believing what they're saying. They're saying, hypothetically, even if this stuff is completely worthless, even if it's just made out of common household ingredients, if it's helping ponies to confront their fears or feel better, is it really so wrong? It was actually a really well done scene, And I really liked how it sort of affected Applejack psychologically, because you can really see her struggling with whether or not she actually sees it as a bad thing, if it's helping Granny Smith to feel better.
In contrast to when they last appeared, they actually did lie in this episode. If we look back at Cider Squeezy, at no point did those characters lie to anybody. They're just kind of jerks. In this episode, they do lie for the showmanship, but when they're confronted, they never lied to her. They actually tell her what the thing is made out of. And they go for, as Goombasa said, they go for the moral dilemma. And that makes them great characters, because they could have been just horrible fibbers, and they could have just written it as they lie, and they're very good liars, and then called it a day. But they made it a little bit more nuanced, and I think that makes it all the more interesting. And that's what I watched this show for.
Heck, they even manufacture a bottle of the stuff and tell her the ingredients while they're trying to play off of her love of Granny Smith like that, which again was a really nice touch. They didn't care that they had been found out, because they knew that they had a way to get out of it through Applejack.
It was bloody ballsy though, wasn't it? I mean, they rested their entire thing on what Applejack's going to do, a pony which pretty much outright hates them.
Yeah, but they know what she's going to do because they're clever.
They were almost in preparation. They knew that they were coming back to Ponyville. It almost felt to me like they'd gotten something ready. They knew they were going to end up at some point bumping into Applejack, and it felt to me like they'd done some prep and they'd had a plan ready for this eventuality.
So, Silver Shill, he's the new character. Do you think that the fandom will fall in love with him as much as they fell in love with Coco Pamel?
Yes.
I'm not crazy about him. I do like his voice. I thought he had a really nice voice, all things considered. But in overall design, in overall actions in this episode, he was very flip-floppy, I think, in how he approached the moral. I don't really see people latching onto him the way that they have Coco Pamel, or even the way that some people have latched onto Seabreeze, if you can believe that.
Oh, God, what? Why?
Or the way that people have latched onto Cheese Sandwich, definitely.
He was voiced by a famous songsmith. I would like to think that he will be as loved, but there will be less porn. I would like to see more of Silver Shill. Because he's a lovable jerk. But he had a good voice. An excellent voice, actually. I think they're knocking it out the park with the incidental characters, certainly.
One thing that I do want to mention about him, though, was the glasses. Because when I first saw him, I actually thought the glasses were part of his body. Like, that was just how his eyes were.
But massive and square.
And then he takes them off, and he has normal eyes, and it kind of freaked me out for a second.
It was an interesting visual tick. It was nice. He's well designed for the fact that he's just like a standard horse body. They gave him costume to make him look interesting. Let's now talk first about how PDK and I were worried that this was going to be an episode about faith healing. Like, really desperately worried.
Okay, just after the break, the first thing we see is loads of really injured ponies and some jaunty music in the background, and then they're all leading towards a big tent. I guess I've seen too many TV shows about criticizing faith healers or something recently, because that's the first thing that came in my mind. And then obviously it was snake oil and not faith healing, because for a second there I really did think My Little Pony were tackling something big like that.
That would have been scary.
I know.
That would have been very scary.
I would love to see Trixie pretending to be a faith healer.
Oh, that'd be so good.
Yes, but it wasn't faith healing. It wasn't that touchy. It was, in fact, just lying to people about how medicine works, which was great. I really wanted, when Applejack said, we're going to find out what's in this, and we're going to go to Twilight, and she was going to science the hell out of it. But as it turned out, she just asked, which I guess is the kind of straight shooting we've come to expect from Applejack.
That's actually a good point to bring up, though. None of the other main six were in this episode, which sort of breaks the pattern here, because pretty much every key episode, we have had all of the main characters together in one place. In fact, in a lot of the normal episodes, we have had all of the main six plus Spike around one another when they didn't really have a purpose to be. And of course, it is Applejack's key episode that bucks the trend, so to speak.
Well, she had a family around her, and generally with Applejack, they substitute Applejack's family for the main six, which they already had 3 extra characters to work around her. I think if there was ever more main six in this, it would have gotten cut for time.
when it comes for cutting for time, let's move on to that really quite dull acrobatic routine. They could have cut that for about 3 minutes of extra bloody time.
It was only 30 seconds long and added depth.
Well, it felt longer. It didn't add anything. They could have had like 2 shots of that and then like Applejack kind of rolling her eyes at the side or something and then cut to stupid death-defying stunt. That was boring. I was actually bored for 30 seconds. I never thought I'd, get so bored so quick.
Well, you weren't as bored as Lyra was during that first dive where she gave the poor guy a 3.
She knows more about synchronized swimming than any of us.
She got to sit on a panel of judges, Goombasa.
That's what I'm saying.
You've never been on a panel of horse judges for swimming, so back off.
I'm on a panel of horse judges every week.
That's
it's
true.
called the Heroic Review.
I thought the synchronized swimming was really good. I mean, I thought the animation was really cool.
The animation was really good. Let's once again talk about the animation. It was really good. I think we can now move on from the animation. Sorry, just every week we just say the animation was pretty good. Yeah, it was. Animation once again really good. Surprise, surprise! This was storyboarded by Sabrina Alberghetti, who always does really good work. She was the one who confirmed that Applejack's parents were dead. Okay, let's talk about the placebo effect and whether or not a comforting lie is better than a harsh truth. In medicine, the placebo effect's quite well known, and generally what the placebo effect is, when it's been studied, is it's very similar to what we see in this episode, amazingly enough. When the placebo effect kicks in, generally, when you're taking a fake pill, you're tricking your own body into believing that it's healthier than it is. When you're poorly or when you have a general infection, if you can convince your body you're taking something to help it, it fights back harder because it's psychosomatically convinced that it has some kind of support. If it's fake, but it's working, we consider that to be working in certain psychological medicines. So, in a way, this was actually an effective treatment because it actually helped Granny Smith. And I think that was an interesting point. Flim and Flam made an excellent argument that if it works, but it's fake, is it fake?
Well, there has to be a certain line that is drawn when you're using the placebo effect. Indeed, if you can convince your body that you're taking something to help fight off an infection or an illness, well, good on you. But it's established that Granny Smith has a poor hip, and judging from some of the other ponies that we saw in the crowd, like that poor guy who had both of his back legs in some sort of wagon apparatus to get around, I'm fairly certain that them trying to use the placebo effect would actually have negative effects.
And that's when Flim and Flam become the villains, and when Applejack realizes that everything is spun out of control is when they actually use Granny Smith to convince other ponies that the treatment is worth taking, that the snake oil is actually an effective treatment. That's when Applejack gets cold feet. I think we can say that Granny Smith's not in danger until she decides to do this massive high jump. That's the point when it gets too far and that it's actually become a negative. I think the argument that was laid out here in the story was really good for that.
I thought it was really good as well, although I thought the point where I thought it went more to if this is a bad thing to do is when they used Silver Shield, when they use him as the example with like 2 crutches, which is an unrealistic thing to expect from this potion, especially when there's so many ponies in the audience who, have broken limbs. That's where I think this is really quite a rough thing to do.
I think actually there could be an argument made for when Granny Smith shows up with a sack full of money to buy the apple and beet leaf serum. That's the point when Applejack should probably have stopped them, because now they're using her good name to sell a fake product, and she's the element of honesty, and people know that.
Yeah, what did they say? I really want to turn this into a slogan somewhere. Granny Smith tested, Applejack approved.
But the thing is, she never actually approved it. Up to a point, it was a lie by omission, so she didn't actually lie. She just didn't say that, no, it's fake, it doesn't work, until she got too far in.
Yeah, she said that it seemed to work for Granny Smith. She wasn't making a catch-all statement, but again, Flim and Flam seized on the opportunity and immediately started to work up the crowd and get them to believe that she was making a catch-all statement about it.
She was kind of using weasel words there. She wasn't going to say it didn't work, but she was going to strongly imply it.
That's what I really enjoyed. I think most about this being her key episode wasn't they just had her out and out lie and then regret it in some scenario. They had her really struggle with something like lying by omission and how you have to toe that line. So it was more interesting than it could have been if they just had her come up with some ridiculous lie and then have to explain that.
What Fee was saying is true. Yeah, it's like when she confronts Silverquill at the swimming event, and he says, well, thanks to you, I've learned that honesty isn't the best policy, which I also thought was a pretty brilliant subversion from all the other key episodes at first. Because in all the other key episodes, what happens? The one-off character immediately learns a lesson after one of the main six have discovered their key and found conviction in their elements. But in this one, it starts off where Applejack convinces him that her element is not always the best thing to use, but then they manage to turn it around by the end of the episode.
Okay, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that this was the best key episode, even though I love Rarity Takes Manhattan.
Yeah, but it was the best key episode for its dealing with the moral / lesson learned rather than the storyline pacing and the characters we love.
Oh, yeah. Rarity Takes Manhattan's still a better episode in that regard. I'm just going to point out now that the writer of this episode, Josh Harbour, also wrote Simple Ways. So this is a man who likes to write a lot of Applejack. I'd just like to comment on and say how much I loved the line from Applebloom that if it's not important to you, it's not important to me, about what was in the Flim Flam Brothers serum. I thought that was absolute genius.
Applebloom as a character was very well used in this episode, I think, sort of encompassing all the innocence and the willingness to believe in something, I think.
Yeah, that was possibly the most I've kind of gotten a sense of them being sisters. Even Sisterhood Social and various things that they've done together, I'm kind of just seeing the Cute Mark Crusader that I don't like and Applejack who I do like. But this was very, very well done. I did kind of get a sense of them, and I didn't hate Applebloom this episode.
What it illustrated to me was, with the whole episode illustrated, was it showed all these bits where they were using Applejack's words and where Applebloom was just trusting to show but not tell us that Applejack and her lie by omission was having major impact, and that Applejack, by not correcting this, was doing serious harm. But it never out and out had anybody say, you know, Applejack, by telling this lie and you being the element of honesty, you could hurt a lot of ponies. Like, that was never said, but it was continuously shown. And I feel like the show could use more writing like that.
Yeah, I love that way of showing, not telling.
Yes. Do this more, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, the cartoon for 6 to 12-year-old girls.
Because, you know, they totally watch our show.
They totally listen in, and I'll bet Megan McCarthy
taking notes of season 6.
Is like, come on, what do we need in season 5 and 6?
I thought that Applejack's key being a bit was so terrible. A bit? Why a bit?
It was the first bit, like, if we're using money as a symbol of like a resource being taken, something permanent, it was the first bit earned by her lie. It was a demonstration of the first time that her lie had directly hurt someone in a material way. That's why it was a bit.
Yeah, I get that, except, I mean, it's so ununique.
Did you want it to be an apple?
No, you know what I thought would have been really good? If he wore the glasses the entire time to sort of show him as a more vulnerable character to get more people to trust him more, and then he took them off as a, you know, this was also a disguise, and then he gives her the glasses.
But the point of her going back and correcting everything that she said is that she did it so that people wouldn't get hurt, so that people wouldn't be exploited anymore through the lie that she was telling. It was all about preventing people using her lie, to take from other people. And that's what the Flim Flam brothers were doing, were profiting from her lapse of judgment, and so did Silvershill. And in that moment, he showed her that he was going to undo the damage that she'd done. So it was something almost healing in that way.
It was also a much more fitting key than Fluttershy's, I think, because Fluttershy got a flower. And you can say what you want about the other key episodes, whether you like them or don't like them, but every single key, I feel, did quite a bit to represent what was being shared by the one-off character involved. What was being given to the main six was very, very important, like Rarity's rainbow thread, the badge from the Wonderbolts, cheese sandwiches, rubber chicken. Yeah, you get what I'm getting at here. In comparison to the last key that we were shown, which was the flower given to Fluttershy by Seabreeze, I think that the bit was actually a very fitting key.
Well, the flower's
certainly much better than the flower. I laugh if by the time the last episode comes around, the flower's all wilted and dead.
But Fluttershy's keys died.
Yeah.
Now we'll never get in this box full of rainbow power.
I bet you that Twilight's is going to be a book.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a thing about magic, which will be interesting.
It'll be tricksy. Done. Confirmed on Heroic Review.
Can we talk about the song?
Goombasa, go for the song.
I enjoyed it. I don't think that it was as catchy or as memorable as the entrance song that they were given in Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, because that one had a lot of resonation within the fan base. It was a very catchy show tune, and it was based off of a song from The Music Man, which is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it.
It is very good.
This song, on the other hand, I thought it was good, but it didn't have the same sort of catchy quality, I think. It definitely played up the tonic the way that it needed to, the same way that their original song played up their cider making machine. But I can't see the fandom latching onto this one the way that they latched onto the first.
This song that they originally came in on, that one was very memorable because it had a lot of repeating refrains. It had a quite a catchy tune to it. The problem that song had was it's about 4.5 minutes long. This song we used here was less than a minute, and in some ways it's preferable, I think. Despite the fact that it's not as catchy, it was quick and it was done.
Yeah, that first one was extremely long. I don't think it was 4.5 minutes, though. I don't think it was that long.
See, I actually think that the long song worked in that episode because it was an introduction song. It was an introduction to the Flim Flam Brothers, what they're all about. It introduced us to the cider making machine. It allowed the show a chance to show us just how good these two ponies were at working up the crowd and playing to their strengths, playing to their wants.
I'm just going to jump in and say I've checked and the song is 3 minutes and 55 seconds long.
I just checked that as well.
There you go.
Holy crap, that is long.
Yeah, the only thing I can add is I didn't find the rhyming in this song very, very good. I kind of struggled with it and I thought, it doesn't feel like you guys tried. But it was a short song, so blessedly short for my tastes.
It was a sales patter. It was a nice sales patter. It wasn't a very good song, but I think it was a nice patter to it. So we'll give it a buy.
And again, it was a good reintroduction to the Flim Flam Brothers, because you have to keep in mind that some people might come into this episode, however slim that chance is, they might have come into this episode having no idea who these characters are. So again, it's short and it might not have rhymed very well, but it is a very good introduction to their characters, I think.
Okay, yep. Anything to add?
Derpy definitely was in the crowd for the stupid synchronized swimming.
Okay.
I've just seen a screenshot.
All right, we have a confirmed Derpy sighting.
Do you want to talk about the lack of physics when it comes to diving?
When Granny Smith dove off that top platform and then Applejack caught her by lassoing her leg, all I could think of was that leg would fall off.
We're thinking about the Spider-Man murder of
broken neck.
Gwen Stacy. Yeah. Yeah, she should have snapped like a whip. We'd have been lucky if her head didn't fly off. She's a cartoon horse. She could fall into a bucket and be fine. Whatever.
But this was a dishpan, man.
But it was a dishpan full of water, so I'm sure she'd have been fine. Well, that was the Heroic Review. Joining me this week was Goombasa.
See you all next week.
PDK.
Annyeong.
Reverb.
Thanks for listening.
I was your moderator, Deadlyreg. Thank you for listening, and see you all next week.
You gotta have faith.